Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to What's the Point? My guest this week has me just so excited because to meet him, to get to know him, and to be able to share his story with you is really something I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm very grateful to have Bobby Herrera as my guest today. Hello, Bobby.
Pleasure to meet you, Bill.
A pleasure to meet you as well, and thank you for your time. And more importantly, let me thank you now for the wisdom and insight that you're going to share with me and our listeners. So for those that don't know Bobby Herrera, he is the president of the Populus group. We'll talk a little bit more about that. He is an author of a book called The Gift of Struggle, which is a must-read, ! We'll talk about that a little bit. He's a proud Army vet. He's a father, a husband, an all-around good guy, but at the very heart of this man, he's a storyteller. And he makes a big impact through his stories. So again, Bobby, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, hail the underdogs, Bill. I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's interesting. Let's hail the underdogs is one of your sayings, and those of you that do know Bobby are familiar with The Gift of Struggle, the book, or at least his signature iconic story called The Bus Story. And yes, we'll talk about that, but not now. You have to wait, and it's worth the wait. But I do want to talk a little bit about how that came about and get to know you a little bit more and let the listeners get to know you a little bit more. So you wrote the book called The Gift of Struggle. And having read that and getting to know a little bit more about you through research and talking to mutual friends, you know, Trevor Noah wrote his book, and it was called Born a Crime, because he, in South Africa, was the son of a black mother and a white father, and at the time, that was a crime in South Africa. I thought your book title could be Born an Underdog, because you were born an underdog, and through most of your life, you've been in a bit of an underdog role. Bobby, tell us some about your family, the 13th child, and so much more.
Well, Bill, I'm very proud of my family. My father was an immigrant from Mexico, my dad and mom. He was a bracero from Mexico, which, it was a fancy Spanish term for, temporary worker, coming across to work in the agricultural fields, a program that started in the agricultural era. And, I joined the family as number 11.
Wow, okay.
And I'm number 11 of 13. I have 7 brothers, 5 sisters. I still eat with my elbows on the table, Bill. And
that's a defensive posture.
I grew up in a migrant farm working family. And so I was introduced to the lessons of hard work very young. And I didn't realize the gift that I was acquiring at the time. You rarely do when you're a young developing human, right? And I was raised in southeast New Mexico, is where I was born. And when I was 18, I proudly raised my hand. It was something that I always wanted to do, something I felt I needed to do, and I unpacked that story in the book. But one of the best things I ever did.
And by that, just to clarify, by that you mean you enlisted in the U.S. Army?
U.S. Army, the best branch, Bill.
There you go.
And I started my entrepreneurial journey in 2002 after a few chapters on my professional journey leading to that. And as you mentioned, my community, the name is Populus Group. We just turned 19. And so I often tell people that, technically we should have graduated high school by now. But in the early years, we flunked at least 3 or 4 times. So we're a bit of an overgrown junior high student right now. We still have a lot to learn, but we live our culture very intentionally, and I'm very proud of all the wonderful people that have been in my community for quite some time now.
You just said something, Bobby, that I absolutely love, and that was to quote you, "We live our culture very well." that, as you know, the heart of my work is in branding, and that is at the heart of branding, knowing and living your culture. That's spectacular. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but quickly, it's pretty amazing that you have a company that's just reached 19 years and you don't have any employees. All you have are climbers.
Yeah, that's
Tell
right.
Tell us about your climbers.
Well, I fell in love with the mountains at a very young age, Bill, and I use the mountains metaphorically because I believe that we're all climbing our own mountain. There's a place that we imagine that looks and feels better than where we are today. And it was about 10 years into the Populist group story where I introduced the climbing theme into our community. And at the time that I introduced it, I never liked the term employees. That sounded too authoritative to me, and it just didn't align with the identity that I wanted to create for the organization. And I started calling everyone climbers. I gave everyone a climber number so they would know at what specific point they joined our climb. And it's also been a real active part of the vernacular that I've introduced into the community. There's a story and a connection that the words that we use, the terms that we use, and it's just helped me create an identity for the organization. And we have stories to back it up because it's one thing to call your employees something, but it's another thing to have stories that actually bring the lessons and the values and the narrative to life. And it was just something that I did intuitively because I wanted us to have an identity. And I just believe that we all share three basic desires, and that's to stand out, to fit in, and to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's what I wanted to do. And good Lord's blessed me to be able to bring that to life.
Well, that just reiterates, thank you for that. That just reiterates why I made a point of saying you're a storyteller, because you give your insights, you give your gifts learned, you give your advice, and you grow your company through the power of story. And you just reiterated that once again. So your story, your introduction to story was as a child, right? Was that your father that was a great storyteller?
Yeah, my dad was a magnificent storyteller, Bill. You probably appreciate this. I called him the Mexican John Wayne. And he, I didn't realize growing up the gift that he was giving me. He was just the kind of man that just had a gift for storytelling. And growing up, obviously there were times when I was like, "Oh, Dad, another story," and then at a certain point, you become your parents. And as I started my entrepreneurial journey, and even prior, when I was on my leadership climb, I found that when I was trying to explain something or teach someone something, or someone would ask me a question. And, I explain this in the book, anytime someone asks you a question, that's the what. And there's always a why to their what. And so as I would try to intentionally listen to that, I would say, you know what, can I tell you a story that I think will bring to life the essence of what I believe you're asking me? And I would tell them a short story. And more often than not, they'd be like, yeah, that's it. Or if I'm trying to teach someone something, I'll say, you know what, let me tell you a story that I think will help you understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And it's something that I did intuitively, and I don't think I would have learned that on my own had my dad not given me that gift, and I'm just so blessed that he did. So,
yeah, and when we are open to realizing it, the gifts and the blessings are abundant. Ironic that you called your father the Mexican John Wayne, because my father was known as John Wayne as well. Didn't have quite the gift of storytelling, but you'll be proud to know that he was a career Army, retired as a bird colonel, So yeah, I've got some Army affiliation, at least
great.
loyalty. Yeah.
That's great.
So let's talk a little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Populus, because I think it really starts to sum up the essence of who you are. It's where you've channeled everything you've got. So it's important to talk about that. So first of all, the Populus group helps businesses manage their non-permanent workforce. And so part of that ties back to your childhood, where you, your father, and your family were a non-permanent workforce, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting thread. My dad was he came to the U.S. as a temporary worker,
Right.
and it's an interesting connection that ultimately that was what my entrepreneurial journey, became. And there's so many organizations that struggle with that, and over the years, I got into the industry by complete accident, Bill. I'm a pretty spiritual guy. Maybe it was part of the plan, but it's been a wonderful opportunity to help organizations better manage that, because it's a very fast-growing segment of an organization's workforce. It's a challenge. So it's been great helping people.
Is it growing even more recently, given our situation with the pandemic and virtual workforce, or has that accelerated and some people might call it the temporary workforce, but I really like your non-permanent workforce titled better.
Yeah, it captures. I'll answer the first question first. So yes and no. I mean, right now there are so many dynamics happening with this pandemic, with unemployment, and we're creating jobs faster than we have the supply to fill them. So there's nowhere you look right now that there aren't help wanted signs, and I think that trend is here to stay. We could talk for days just on that trend alone, but in short, over the past 5-10 years, the trend has been steadily increasing significantly. And organizations that don't have a great grip on how they're going to be very intentional and strategic with a non-permanent workforce, they will struggle, pun intended, because that's a very fast-growing segment of the war for talent these days.
Well, not only is that a fast-growing segment, it's an all-important segment. We talked a little bit before we started recording that my belief and my experience in the world of company brand, is that the single most overlooked and underutilized and mismanaged element of most companies' brands are their people. And Populus is Latin for people, and you're very people-centric in your business, and that is good not just for the clients that you're working for, but it's also good for the non-permanent workers that you engage. So having that people-centric, having people and caring about people at its core is going to, I think, make a huge difference as we move forward, because people want to feel appreciated more so now, I think, than ever.
I mean, Bill, I think we'd agree. Anyone that's watched a child for a day or been a parent, like, we're born wanting to be heard, and we also all want a voice, and so it's permission to play in leadership, and if you don't do that, you're not participating in your own rescue, as a good friend of mine says. So
wow, I love that.
You're setting yourself up for some challenge.
Not participating in your own rescue. That's fabulous. So I don't want to spend the entire time on the Populus group, but just segueing your whole purpose and your belief in people within the Populus group, you've got the Populus Project. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, that's in simple form, that's the foundational arm of my community. So in short, that's where I bring the bus story to life, the purpose of why we exist. At my core, Bill, I believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to succeed, and that's that. Being a front row fan of the underdog. And, if we tell the bus story, or if someone reads it in the book, they'll understand why. But that's why we exist. That's why I started this community to begin with, to pay forward a kind act that changed my life when I was a young man. And then secondly, it's how we behave, and that's our culture code. It's centered around 3 behavioral values, and that's, we give more than we take, we speak from the heart, and we go off the beaten path. Right? So understanding why we exist, understanding how we behave is critical to everything that we do. And the Populist Group project is the way that we give more than we take, the way we give back. I invest a lot of time, energy, and investments into helping kids born on the wrong side of the opportunity divide, like I was, and veteran entrepreneurs who want to take control of their story, like I did. So.
Well, I think it's absolutely terrific, and we're getting closer, everybody, to talking about the bus story. But I want to go in one other direction first. Let me just interrupt myself here just by saying I love your phrase "born on the wrong side of the opportunity divide." That is so accurate. That is just so telling, because it takes away all of the other social stipulations about age, race, and all that kind of stuff. It just we have opportunities or we don't have opportunities. It
Right.
gets pretty simple. And there are a lot of people born on the wrong side of that opportunity divide, and there's a lot of us who weren't, and we need to understand that is what's called privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean we haven't worked hard for what we've gotten. It just means we didn't have to do a lot of the things those on the wrong side of the opportunity divide did. So now let's talk about the gift of struggle. I love the book. I've fallen in love with it from the second I heard about it and read it. And we've talked over my shoulder. Those of you on YouTube and my stack of books that I give away, there's a whole supply of books, The Gift of Struggle. So if I see you, you may get one. But here's what I love about this book. It's story-driven, and it's very simple, but it's very heartfelt. Every chapter has basically a struggle, and then you take from that struggle the gift, and then at the end of every chapter, you have questions to guide people on their life journey, to help take that learning and put it to practical application. It's brilliant.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
I especially love that the chapters and all of those, the struggle, the gift, and the questions are typically 4 pages, 5 pages of a relatively small-sized book. So that's right up my alley.
Yeah,
but one of the stories. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, when I, writing the book wasn't on my list, Bill, and I was more of a storyteller. Told a lot of stories to, kids and veterans, and I spoke at events and stuff, and I just kept getting encouragement to write a book. And when I finally made the choice to do so, I wanted to write something that, in short, I wanted to write the book that I wish someone would have written for me. And I also wanted to write a book that was simple and palatable and wasn't intimidating, that if someone was getting on a flight in Chicago, they could easily be done with the book before they landed in Dallas. And I think we checked those boxes, and I'm just very fortunate that it's helped a lot of people.
Well, I want to thank you for your approach, because yes, anyone that has a normal reading speed could finish at Chicago to Dallas on a plane. But it's the gift that keeps on giving, to quote the old Timex commercials, because of the lessons and the guidance on the questions. So it's not just a quick read and put it down. If you really want the value of it, if you really want to help shape your own purpose and your own journey, this book is kind of a how-to in the most simplistic yet powerful, impactful form I've seen. So the bus story is next, but first, I want to ask you if you'll talk about when you very first realized that some of your struggles really were a gift. And you talked earlier about raising your hand and joining the Army. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to boot camp at 4:30, whatever, what, midnight or whatever.
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks into boot camp, Bill, that I had a pretty formidable event as a young man. And I grew up in a migrant farm working family. My dad would wake us up in the wee hours of the morning to to work before school, so I was very accustomed to waking up really early. And about 3 weeks in, we were polishing our boots by flashlight late at night. And we were exhausted. I had more than once questioned why I was there. And I remember looking around and I could hear the moaning and the groaning. And, 4:30 was going to come too quickly for most of us. And I recall thinking, I've been waking up in the wee hours of the morning to work ever since I was, in third grade. Mm-hmm. And it just clicked for me. I said, 4:30, what's the big deal? That's half an hour earlier than I'm used to. And I specifically remember thinking, like, there's nothing they can do or say to me that I haven't experienced already, in many cases in a harsher manner because of the modesty that my family went through. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I think it was the flap of the butterfly wings that eventually became my very simple, leadership philosophy, in that we all struggle. Every struggle teaches us something. And leadership is about sharing those gifts with others. Mm-hmm. And it just started changing how I viewed the struggles that I had gone through as a young man up to that point, and started shaping how I started helping others, do the same with theirs. But I was 18, so, my brain wasn't fully developed yet, but I remember thinking that, and that was a very formidable event in how I viewed my story.
Well, thank you for sharing it, first of all, but I will debate you that your brain wasn't very well developed, because realizing that struggle and benefit or hardship, as much as anything, becomes a matter of perspective. Mm-hmm. And for you at that time to be able to sit there based on what you went through as a child, with your father, the fabulous storyteller, waking up all of his children to go work in the fields to survive, learning hard work, waking up, a 3-year-old getting up at 5 a.m, are you kidding me? But for you to suddenly have that, as you said, the butterfly wings or the light going off, or that aha moment that I talk about a lot, that, hey, it's a matter of perspective. That is at the root, I think, of your entire platform and the essence of the gift of struggle. So that's why I wanted to start with that, because I wanted to make sure we talked about perception and interpretation of, am I a victim or is there a lesson here, is really important. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And thank you for that, as you call it, undeveloped 18-year-old brain being so much more developed than you thought.
And just for the record, it was third grade, not 3-year-old. I was still causing all kinds of mischief as a 3-year-old. But as a third grader, I was being shaken early in the morning to work.
Okay, yeah, well, that's fair, but I guess that's true, because most 3-year-olds are awake at 5 a.m. crying for a bottle, right, or something.
Unfortunately, yes.
Well, thanks for correcting me. Now, everybody, here it is, because the polishing your boot in the Army story helps explain the understanding that struggle can be a gift if we look at it. But what really touched your life, and I think touched your heart, is the bus story. And so I won't give any more intro to that, other than say, will you please share that story with us, Bobby?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, when I was 17, Bill, my brother and I, we were on a return trip home from a basketball game. And along the way, the team stops for dinner. Well, everybody unloads off the bus, except for me and my brother Ed. And, as I mentioned at that point in my family story, like, we didn't have the means to play sports and afford dinner. And so we were very accustomed to staying back on the bus. And my mom would prepare her, legendary burritos for us. And, we were about to, open our dinner and, alone on the bus when, one of the dads to the other player steps on board. And as he's walking, back towards us, he razzed me a little bit because Ed had outscored me that night. And then he said something to me that I will always remember. He says, Bobby, it would make me very happy if you would allow me to buy you boys dinner so that you can join the rest of the team. Nobody else has to know. All you have to do to thank me is do the same thing for another great kid just like you in the future. And I will never forget how I felt in that moment. Like, I had this wave of gratitude that came over me that still to this day is hard for me to explain. And I remember stepping off the bus that night. And although I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, aside from having the desire to raise my hand a year later, I remember specifically thinking, like, even though I don't know what I'm going to do, I know why. I'm going to somehow, some way, figure out a way to pay forward that kind act to other kids like me who were born on the wrong side of the opportunity divide. And that moment became the invisible force that drove me. And, people have often asked me why it had such a profound impact on me. And, aside from the fact that I wanted my future to look different than my past, and struggle had been the only consistent theme in my family story, there was something different about this man that came on board the bus. He was a very successful businessman in the community. And the narrative that I told was that, people like him, his name was Harry Teague, they don't see kids like me. And with one kind act, not only did he teach me that I was wrong, but he taught me that the single most important act in leadership is seeing and encouraging potential. Like, that was the very first time in my life that I felt seen. And he showed me with one kind act that humility is a secret of the wise, and he could have done it any other way. But the way he did it demonstrated for me that he wanted more for me than from me. And that moment just stuck in my heart, and it became the invisible force that drove me, and it's what has kept my pilot light lit since.
I've heard you tell that story on podcast. I've read it multiple times in the book, and it still gives me chills every time I hear it, for just a multitude of reasons, Bobby. Like you said, he was doing it for you, as opposed to for himself, where, how many times have we seen someone say, oh, come on, I can afford it, let me buy it for you, and that just kind of undermines the individual that you're trying to help, whether it's intentionally doing that or not. That's kind of what it does. But what you just said and the way you just explained it is one of the reasons that I am so grateful that you have agreed to be a guest on this podcast, because what I talk about is the purpose principle, where we really need to find our purpose, or our why, our mission, vision, what I call it our purpose, to know what's going to drive us. And then once we know our purpose, that ignites our passion. And our passion then fuels that purpose. So you knew early on that I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew why I was going to do it. And that ignited the passion to figure out how you're going to do that in your life. And it didn't come to you in like a lightning bolt. It was something that developed over time. But once you knew that purpose and knew it in your heart and in your soul, the passion was lit. And then the third part of my purpose principle is persistence. You've stuck with it all these many years, and you've helped countless people. So what did you say the gentleman's name was? Henry Teague?
Harry. Yeah, Harry Teague. Yeah, great man.
Wherever he is, whatever he's doing, a heartfelt thank you to him for that touch on your life, because of the lives you've in turn touched. It's really amazing.
So, Bill, I think if you don't mind, I think it's also important that that moment, like and the impact that moment had on me, it also later became a very big leadership mistake that I made that I think people could benefit from.
Oh yeah, please.
Are you okay if I share that?
Absolutely, 100%.
When I started Populus Group in 2002, like that bus story, that moment was raging like an inferno inside me, and for the next 9-10 years, I made a tragic mistake in that I was the only one that knew that story. And obviously my brother knew, and at the time my wife knew, but nobody else knew. And here I was trying to create this organization that helped people understand and feel like they were something, part of something bigger than themselves. Well, I finally mustered up the courage, and I share this in the book on how I, finally told that story about 10 years in. And I had yet to recognize that vulnerability is a key competency of leadership. And when I told that story, Bill, it changed everything. Mm. It helped everyone understand that I wasn't just this intense entrepreneur. And I believe they knew that I wanted good for them, but they didn't know, and I hadn't yet created what I think is a really important part of leadership, and that is contribution. I hadn't given them something to contribute towards. And because I hadn't done that, they didn't know how to help me. And once I did tell that bus story, they understood what I was trying to create and why I was trying to create it. Mm-hmm. And therefore, they could make the choice to be a part of that story with me and contribute themselves. And I often tell people that that's the moment that my company transformed into a community. Mm. And not only did our purpose start coming to life, but our story really started coming to life. Mm. And all the growth that followed that is, it's night and day to what happened before that. And, often when I share those things and I tell that leadership mistake, I'll put the data out in front of these leaders and I say, you tell me, does that matter? And, I show them the growth before and then I show them the growth after. I'm like, you decide. Is it worth telling your story? And it changed everything.
Again, just the nuggets and the impact of your stories are never ending. Tell me once again your comment about vulnerability is key to leadership. Is that what you said?
I said I had yet to figure out that vulnerability was a key competency of leadership. It's like I hadn't shown my wonderful climbers yet, that I was human, and I hadn't shown them my heart. And once I did, they saw me differently, and they knew just how much I cared. They knew that I wanted more for them than from them, just like Mr. Teague had demonstrated for me. Mm-hmm. And I had yet to reconnect with Mr. Teague too. I finally reached back out to him. It was about 2016, 15. I forget. But I called him up, Bill, and I thanked him, and I told him the bus story, and he remembered it, and it was a very special moment for him and I, and I thanked him and told him how grateful I was and what I had been able to create as a result. And a few days later, I got a note from him, and in that note, he said, "Bobby, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for telling me the story on the bus." And he said, "I don't mind sharing the many tears that I shed during and after that call. You made me feel like my life had mattered."
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing moment that was for both of you.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of tears shed for both of us. It was good.
That's fantastic. So this book, everybody, you've got to get it. You've got to read it. I don't want to tell you everything that's in the book, but there's two other stories I want to touch on, if we're okay. And I'm trying to keep my eye on time. I know you have a commitment here shortly, but there's two stories, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you to share with us, because the first one is as tear-jerking to me as your story just now about calling Mr. Teague again. And that is a chapter that you call The Phone Call. And the phone call has to do with love and commitment and accountability and family and unexpected gifts.
Yeah, it's I've actually been told, Bill, maybe I've been told by quite a few people that it was so powerful reading it that maybe we encourage people to read that one, because it's, that's probably that's the best gift that my dad left me in his final days, and I think that would be a good one for readers to pick up and read. It's a second story in the book, right after the bus story, and I unpack a little bit of our history. So why don't we encourage the readers to read that one? I think that's a real powerful one for them.
So a bit of a teaser. I'm fine with that. I will tell you this. Everyone that's listening that is going, what are you teasing me for? I want it now. If you don't have the book, get the book, read everything in it. But that particular story, Bobby, is the one that touched me more than any of the other stories. And it probably has a lot to do with your interaction with the Mexican John Wayne and my interaction with my American John Wayne. It's an absolutely heartwarming, heart-filling story. So I think a tease is a good thing there. Thanks.
I've had more people. That may be one of the just been a blessing to hear from readers from all over the world, and I think that's probably been that and the bus story have been the two most active threads of comments that I've received. Is like, and I get stories about fathers and relationships with fathers. It's wonderful to get those.
It's very cool. Thank you so much for having the vulnerability to put that in your book. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
okay, we might have time for one more story if you are open to giving of it. Talking about 3-year-olds or third graders, your children, and the toy page, the toy story. Yeah,
it's my daughter's favorite story.
Of course, she's the centerpiece of
it. That's right. She is. She has me. She constantly has me tell it to her. I have 3 coconuts, and I call them my coconuts because, they're brown on the outside like Dad and white on the inside like their Norwegian mother. And it was about 2011, I think. I'd come home from work, and I have this tradition. Anytime I'd come home from work, I would whistle. And they knew Dad's whistle because they'd heard it from the moment they were born. And it was my signal to them that, hey, Dad's home, and the pitter-patter of feet, best part of my day, would come running towards me. And this particular evening, I came home, I whistled, and nobody came. And I'm like, okay, something's up. They always come when I whistle. And I remember peeking around the corner, and I walk in, and they're active in a game. They're in the middle of the living room. And I go over to the kitchen, say hello and everything. And I notice that they're creating this big pile. My daughter's making this big toy pile. And she's sitting there, just stacking her toys in this big old pile. And I'm just sitting there enjoying watching her. I grabbed a beer, and all of a sudden I look over and, my 2 boys, they were like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. They start coming over to invade her fun and give little sister a hard time, and she's fending them off, like, no, that's my pile, no, and she's blocking, doing everything she can. And then all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off for one of my boys, and instead of trying to invade her pile, he decides to help, and he goes over and he goes, hey, Sophia, which toy do you want next? And her demeanor completely changed. And she's like, well, and she pointed, she goes, that one. And then she started directing traffic, and then she was on top of the world. And the other brother figured it out too. Instead of attacking her pile, let me help her with it, right? And before you know it, they have this wonderful, crazy toy pile going in the living room, playing together. And I remember thinking at that moment, it's like, hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we all cooperated and worked that way? Because when you really think about it, everybody has their own pile and their own stuff. And nobody likes it when our piles get invaded, when our piles get attacked. Like, we like to own our piles. So just a couple of tweaks in our approaches with whoever we're trying to help, instead of trying to impose ourselves on the piles and so forth. And, I unpacked the lesson with greater depth on how I applied that to what we were trying to do, because at the time I had yet to figure out that, given my organization focus around one singular pile and rallying us together, it was pretty close to the time that I had finally created enough courage to tell the bus story. So along with introducing the purpose, along with bringing a focus that my community has never had before around one pile, again, it just compounded the wonderful opportunity that that I was able to create for a lot of people that had decided to join the journey with me. And that toy pile really set off a light bulb on how I did that for a whole community of people at the time, just watching my kids play.
And that is again another fabulous story, and just a powerful takeaway from it. And I think about your daughter's name is Sophia, right?
Sophia.
Sophia, she's learning to be such a great manager and a leader herself. I mean, seriously, the lesson for her. I'll have to come out with another execution of my book, Women Who Won, so I can devote a chapter to her and share the results of the toy pile. I think that's great. So we are getting close to what I know to be your deadline. And again, thank you so much for your time and sharing yourself and your stories and the lessons and being vulnerable. This show always has one question, and you probably know it's coming. But in the context of everything we've talked about, in the context of your life, in the context of our lives, in the context of your spiritual life and your family and everything else, when you look at things in your day, what's the point? What do you see as the point?
Oh, great question, Bill. You know how I said earlier, I sometimes answer a question with a story. Go
ahead, feel free.
I did a speaking engagement one time in Seattle, and there were about 250 CEOs, and this attendee, this woman came up to me afterwards, and she introduced herself, and she says, "Hey, I never heard of you. I really enjoyed your talk." She goes, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" She said, "In your opinion, what's the single most important characteristic of leadership in one word?" And I just smiled, and I looked at her. I said, "Well," I said, "that's simple. It's not only just one word, but mine is simple." And I said, "Generosity." And we went on to talk about it, because in my opinion, Bill, and I do the prayer for generosity with my children every day. I mean, our life and the point, it's all about giving. I mean, that's we're hardwired to give, and we're hardwired to leave a legacy, and it doesn't happen if we don't give more than we take. And that's what I sign my emails off with: give more than we take, give greater than take. Because in the end, there's many things you can't take with you, but what you can leave is the impact of your generosity.
I love it. That's powerful. And it's led to one more question. I promise this will be the last one. But I just want you to explain another one of your mottos, because this story in your life really, a lot of people, we want to change the world. You've got a motto of just one. Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. It's simple for me. Anytime whether I do a podcast, whether I, when I wrote the book, when I do a storytelling engagement, when I step on stage, my motto is simple: just one. And that is, if I can just help one person in that time, it's a great day. And I imagine the possibilities if we all had that just one mindset. Like, just help just one person a day, just one person every time that you do something. We could all do some really good things together, and boy, does the world need it now, Bill. But that's it, just one. And if I do that, it's a victory for me.
Bobby Herrera, you are a gift. You're a gift to me. You're a gift to anyone and everyone who's read your book or who will read your book. Your gift of your time and your wisdom today is so much appreciated. Thank you, and I wish you continued success with all of your endeavors because they're so meaningful. And with that, again, all I can say is thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, well, hail the underdogs, Bill. It's been my pleasure. God bless you, and keep doing good, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.